You took the max mortgage you qualified for, which makes you nuts. Well, not exactly nuts, but just remember, banks oftentimes, if you show your income, you show a high W-2, or you claim a lot in your tax returns, they're able to lend a lot versus what you show. But it doesn't necessarily mean you can afford it. So, sometimes you might find yourself in a position where you bit off a bigger piece than you can chew, you can't afford your mortgage, you get foreclosed upon, and now you're living in a van down by the river. I'm Andrew Russell, owner and founder of RCG Mortgage, top originator across the country via Scotsman Guide, 3 years in a row, three-peat winner of NABI Broker of the Year, and just a straight-up mortgage MacGyver guru. All right, kids, it's our favorite time of the day. It's story time, and who's the focus for today's story? None other than Fierro and Glenda. So, our friends Fierro and Glenda, happily married. That's right. In this story, they're happily married, and they're living in a sick townhouse right by the water, loving life. So what happens? Their marriage is going great, super in love. They actually have not one, but two. They have twins. So twins are on the way. So Glenda's, of course, like, yo, Fierro, my man, it's time to buy a house. We want something with a white picket fence and a sick backyard, maybe a pool. We need more bedrooms. This townhouse is just not cutting it. So first things first, good old Fierro's like, well, Glenda, I actually have to get a pre-approval. He's smart. He reaches out to a mortgage broker, does his pre-approval, and of course they go over a bunch of things. First thing is, hey, Fierro, how's your credit? Of course, Fierro's credit, sick, amazing. He's got a 742 credit score, not a ton of debt, just has a nice car. He pays about $1,200 a month for his car, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Other than that, no debt. Post-grad school, he paid off all his debt. Awesome. Next thing is, hey, Fierro, how much have you guys saved for a down payment? We're probably working with anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000. Awesome. The loan officer is obviously, making notes and seeing, of course, the third thing, which is super important. Fierro, what do you do for a living? He actually just got a W-2. Amazing job for one of these huge AI, startup companies, and he makes $240,000 a year, or about $20,000 a month. So they take a peek at, what does that look like? What does he make a month? If he's making 20 grand a month, he'd probably qualify for about a 9,000-ish, payment. And then reverse engineer, what does that look like for a house? Of course, they live on Long Island, and it's probably about $1 million house. So they kind of, obviously she's pregnant with twins, so they're plopping around, they're looking at houses. They finally find a house, and they fall in love with it. And the seller falls in love with them and accepts their offer at $1 million. So what does that scenario look like? Because, of course, it's one thing to be renting in a townhouse, and I think their rent was something about $4,000 or $5,000 a month, which is high, but it's, pretty typical in the area that they're living in. Now they're going to buy a house. So is it something that they're going to be able to afford? Let's take a peek at what it looks like. So none other than our friend, the Sharpie. We have a $1 million sale price. And then from there, we have a 3.5% down payment, because guess what? Fierro wants to do an FHA mortgage where he puts the minimal down. So that's going to be about $35,000 for the down payment. From there, what did he qualify for? Remember, guys, he had a 742 credit score, so it's an interest rate, a 30-year fixed rate of 6% with a 7% APR. So here's your APR, here's your rate. Now, of course, disclaimer, this is an educational video, and we're using very loose and rough numbers just for your entertaining pleasure. So, of course, the mortgage is going to be comprised of a bunch of things. First is principal and interest. So principal and interest is going to be about $6,000 a month. Then your mortgage insurance, the FHA mortgage insurance, is going to be roughly about $600 a month. And then you're going to have taxes and insurance. So roughly another $2,500 a month. It's expensive. Taxes are expensive in this area. Taxes and insurance. So that's going to run a good old $9,100 a month, all in for the mortgage, with everything for Fierro and for Glenda. Now, just remember, he made about $240,000 for the year. That's about $20,000 a month of W-2 income. So as long as for FHA, with that credit score at the $20,000 a month, as long as he has less than 10% of that monthly in liabilities, remember he had a $1,200 car payment. So 10% of the 20 grand is $2,000. So that's less than $2,000. So he and Glenda, they're able to afford the max based on that $20,000, which is a little less than $9,400 a month for the mortgage payment. Now, $9,400 a month for a mortgage payment is more than the $9,100, means that's less, which means that they qualify for it. But think about it. He's making $20,000 a month, and the mortgage payment is $9,100. Now, he's a W-2 employee. What's he going to net after taxes? They have a life. They have twins on the way. OMG, and things are starting to spiral. So I can hear you guys now. That's too much. It's not something that he can afford. Now, it does seem high, and there's always either additional income or there are alternate ways to make this more affordable. That's something that we'll talk through in a little bit. And of course, I hear you as well. Oh my God, that 3.5% down payment. If he put 20% down, if he's saved up, it'd be more affordable. While that sounds true, the average consumer can only save up after a decade about 10%. Now, 10% is not even for a down payment. Remember, there's closing costs too. So a 10% saved amount is probably a 5%-ish or even 3.5% down payment plus the rest for closing costs. So this is a real life example of something that is actually true in reality. So we're going to talk through two things right now. The first, what would the affordability of reality actually look like after taxes? And the next thing would, of course, be if it's not affordable. And again, I'm not insulting you, Fierro. You're the man, and I'm not saying you can't afford this. But if things are a little bit tight, what are some things we could do to make this scenario more affordable? Now, of course, first, you got to change the color of the Sharpie. So again, we have $1 million sale price, down payment, rate, $9,400 is obviously going to be our mortgage payment. Now the big thing to account for is, let's call this portion 2 of our conversation. So $20,000 a month. If our boy Fierro is living in New York, which he is, he's married, no kids yet, he's probably best case scenario, $20,000 a month. If he contributes to insurance and 401ks, walking away with $11,000 a month. So again, that's the $20,000. Let's say 55% of that post-tax. Now, as you can see, $11,000, $9,100 is obviously the mortgage payment. So roughly, it leaves $1,900 a month. Already, we said he had a $1,200 car payment. I'm sure that car has insurance. My boy Fierro has some Hot Wheels. He likes to get around town in class. So you figure that's another $200 a month at least. I'm sure him and Glenda, she seems kind of classy. They probably like to go on date night. So what's date night cost? It's expensive. I'm sure at least they're spending $1,000 a month for cool stuff throughout the month, and they have a life, right? Uber Eats bills are wild. There's all sorts of things. Gym membership, Fierro definitely keeps up with that. So the point is, even with just adding another $1,000 to be alive, that's $3,400 a month in ancillary things, where he only had $1,900 left over every single month. They're underwater. He's going to have to dip into savings, which he probably didn't have after this purchase. So as you can see, this scenario just straight up does not work for them. So again, $1 million sale price, 3.5% down with that credit score, with the market rates with where they're at now, although he qualifies, now we're talking here affordability. If he makes $20,000 a month, unfortunately, he's not netting $20,000 a month. After his insurance benefits, after 401k, after all sorts of things, he's netting about $11,000. That's his net. With all the other life stuff that he has going on, which is another $3,400. If you add all that together, like we said, that's another $12,500. $12,500 is way more than $11,000. So he just simply is underwater. So what are some effective strategies to get out of this mountain of debt? Or why even buy if it's something that you can't afford? There are some ways that we can kind of mitigate this. And let's take a peek at maybe a lower purchase price and maybe an option of a house with an accessory unit to rent. Aha, some good examples. Let's take a peek. But before we do, it's Sharpie color switch time, folks. All right. So let's make this affordable for Fierro and for Glenda. So they're walking into a house. They have twins on the way. Life is good. He's not going to be buried in debt where he's going to have to take a second job, never see his kids, and the relationship will take a toll on both of them. All right, so the third and final, we have, again, $1 million scenario, 3.5% down, $9,100 payment, right? We have all this perfectly laid out, but it's time, folks, to make this more affordable for both of them. Now, the first thing is, I don't think $1 million is going to do it, guys. I think let's lower the price to $700,000, which is very doable. So let's say a $700,000 sale price, a 3.5% down payment of $24,500. Let's hope I'm good at math. Apparently, I do that for a living. From there, same thing. We have the same credit score, right? We have a 6% rate. We have a 7% APR. So now you're talking $4,200 a month for principal and interest for the mortgage. We're talking mortgage insurance is a little cheaper at that amount. I got your back, Fierro. So let's say $300 a month. And then you figure tax and insurance. Let's say it's another $1,200 all in. So this is taxes and insurance, this is mortgage insurance, and this is principal and interest. So now you're talking $5,700 a month. So this house will be $5,700 a month versus $9,100. So if we bring all this stuff down, remember, Fierro was netting about $11,000 a month. From that 11, there was a $1,200 car payment, some other stuff, right? Another $200, and then it was like another $2,000. So his ancillary debt, and it's probably more than this, folks. We're being very conservative, unfortunately, for Fierro. It's $3,400 a month. So $5,700 and $3,400, that's about 11. It's right on the head. Now, do you ever want to buy a house and between all your discretionary bills in the house be right on the head with what you make? Absolutely 100% no. So another cool option is this house has to have a rental in it. So there's a really cool feature right now is that a lot of houses have either legal or illegal accessory unit rentals, and it's actually allowed in mortgage world. So imagine this house had a $2,000 a month rent. So now Fierro and Glenda, they can go out, they can find themselves an amazing tenant. Who knows, maybe they babysit for them at a cheaper cost. But if they do, and they can save $2,000 a month by taking that rent and repurposing into their mortgage, instead of $11,000 over here and $11,000 over here, and having $0, God forbid, for a rainy day, maybe get sick, or maybe Fierro wants to go on a guy's trip. A lot goes on with twins, guys. That extra $2,000 a month will increase their liquidity for emergency scenarios and for all the things that will affect them to have a better opportunity to put themselves in a position for success versus Fierro being stressed out of his mind. So as you guys saw, we just went over what Fierro and Glenda were able to qualify for, but what was more affordable for them, pivoting into a lower price point with a tenant, so it's way easier for them on a month-to-month basis to qualify for this house. So, I don't know if you guys knew this, last weekend they actually went out, they were looking at houses, they fell in love with a house, made an offer, it was accepted, now they're in contract, and it's time to get the mortgage. So in our next video, we're gonna talk about the fastest way possible to close on your mortgage.